He is a multiple-time TEDx speaker, National Poetry Slam semifinalist, regional Emmy-nominated writer, and a 2021 National Mexican Slam champion. He is a formerly undocumented immigrant to the United States, and his work focuses on cultural identity, immigrant narratives, masculinity, memory, and the intersection of them all. His self-published collection of poems, Moreno, Prieto, and Brown, has sold over 2,000 copies and has been incorporated in high school and college curriculums across several states in the U.S. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Alejandro Jimenez.
How you all doing?
Good.
Hard life. Thank you all for being here. So, yeah, thank you for all being here. Thank you for having me and for reaching out, Alexis. And yeah, just the folks that made this everything possible. Thank you. So a round of applause to you all. Awesome, cool. So during our time together, so the first about 45 minutes or so we're going to be spent on a writing workshop. Thank you all for being back. Do you all want a high energy poem to start off with, or a kind of mellow?
High energy.
High energy. All right. Cool. When I was in 3rd grade, about 3 times a week, I would come back home with my pants wet from my own pee. You see, Mrs. Parrott wouldn't allow me to go to the bathroom because I wasn't pronouncing my request correctly. Blame it on these cheekbones, Mrs. Parrott. This bent, out-of-shape jaw passed down to me by martyrs' old secrets that I wish I could understand many times. I've wanted to stop its clenching, but my mouth is like my people. We don't deal well with assimilation or systems of oppression. Despite the Bible shoved down to the bottom of my stomach, the paper cuts on my gums can tell you of what we have been through. Lynching. It doesn't just happen by the neck, Mrs. Parrott. You see, my tongue was treated like Emmett Till. Beaten, strangled, thrown into the bottom of Lago Texcoco, hanged like Joaquin Murrieta, decapitated in this place, cut off like braids upon arrival to boarding school, stretched in 4 directions like Tupac Amaru until he ripped. So I apologize for my mispronunciation. If I made you point your ear toward my mouth, I apologize. I never meant to make you waste your energy, but I have bodies suspended from my vocal cords, and their dangling feet scratch the base of my throat, so I apologize if I stutter. There are memories of conquistadores feeding babies to dogs buried inside of my tongue that I wish I couldn't remember. That's why sometimes you have to ask me to repeat myself. That's why sometimes you have to ask me to repeat myself, because my brothers, empty, grumbling stomach from searching for food in Tijuana dumpsters at the age of 2 after being deported with my mother, did not wash down my saliva enough to have your words roll off the tip of my tongue flawlessly. I apologize, Mrs. Parrott, because my native tongue refuses to die, because there are temples planted on top of my teeth. That's why they're called wisdom, and that's why I won't go to the dentist, because they will just try to take them out. Because like the blanket you gave us, Mrs. Parrott, I have smallpox for taste buds, and they get in my way when I try to speak, so I apologize if I stutter. My enunciation is not the best, Mrs. Parrott. It's because Mesa Verde was carved into the inner walls of my cheeks long before its current place. I can show you. I can. But you wouldn't understand. Just like you don't understand why it is that I keep quiet sometimes. It's because I have Sitting Bull's headdress hanging from the roof of my mouth, and I am afraid you may want to steal it just like you did it with these black hills. I am sorry if my lips are too stiff to shape your words correctly. They are still dry from our desert walk to get to this country, Mrs. Parrott. Did you advise my previous employers to send me to speech classes? Did you ever imagine how it is that I explained to my mother that I peed my pants? Again, and again, Mrs. Parrott. I really need to go. I've been holding this for such a long time, and I need to let it out. It might smell like genocide. like burnt ancient scriptures where you told me to pronounce my words correctly, and for me, that means to speak the truth as proof that I have mastered your language. I wrote you this note. So, Mrs. Parrott, may I please go to the bathroom? So, the very first big break I got in my poetry career about 10 years ago when that poem was written. I grew up in Oregon. When I moved from Mexico, went to rural Oregon. When the Capitol got stormed a year and a half ago or a year ago or whatever it was, however long it's been, that's kind of like the environment we grew up in rural Oregon, right? So especially being farm workers, being undocumented and that kind of stuff, that was the environment, right? You're not welcomed, whatever, right? All that kinds of stuff. So I got invited to perform at this in this rural town in Oregon. It's one of those what they call sundown towns, or it used to be one of those sundown towns, right? Where you're a person of color, right? After the sun goes down, you don't want to be there, right? But I was like, oh man, they're paying me good money. And like this is like my first out-of-state travel. I was living in Denver at that time, so I had to fly over. And so I was like, sure, whatever, let's go. And I was like, I did throughout my set, I get to the point where I'm like, do I read this poem or not? I'm like, oh my God. The audience is like a bunch of like old white people, right? Like old and just vendors, and I'm like, oh my God, these people are gonna like, give me crap over this. So I was like, whatever, it's my story, I'm gonna read it. The poem was freshly, almost, had probably written it like a month or two before. I read the poem, the night goes on, blah, 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 people are lining up to say hi or whatever. And I'm just expecting people to like just be jerks, right? But this little old brown lady, like white hair, curly, oxygen tank, cane, right? Old, like 75 minimum, right? She walks up to me, she hugs me, she's crying. And I'm like, oh my God, she's gonna die. Please don't die. And she holds me like this. And she says, that poem about your teacher in 3rd grade was the same exact thing that happened to me when I was in 3rd grade here in the town, right? I thought I was going to die without someone telling my story, or without hearing my story. And then we just both cried. I hugged her, and I whispered into her ear, let's die. I'm just playing like that. But in that moment, right, I think I've experienced it a couple times in my life, maybe 3 times in my life, where I just felt something leave me, and I'm like, I don't need this anymore. It doesn't serve me to be this angry. It doesn't serve me to think this about myself. That was one of those moments, right, where I was like, whoa, like this is the power of words. Right? This is the power of telling a story, right? In whatever form you want to say it, right? Poetry, song, whatever it is, right? This lady, right, had to wait however long to feel that she had, to see herself reflected somewhere, especially in a space like that, right? That poem also, coincidentally, Mrs. Parrott is a real person, was a real person. I found out that she died a few months after I wrote the poem. And I was like, oh my God, did I kill Mrs. Parrott? But, yeah, we'll go on with the next one. Speaking about memory, this poem's untitled. It's about immigration. In the photo, I'm 3 years old, and off camera, our dog, a black and red Doberman without a tail that we nicknamed Mocho, was still alive. He hadn't eaten whatever made him start puking uncontrollably, which caused my grandmother to ask my uncle to put Mocho out of his misery. I stood atop the basurero as Mocho's lifeless body was now with a hole in its head was thrown down the cliff into the river. There was a lot of trash, but Mocho was the first dead dog I had seen in it. His body stopped rolling, belly up. And over time, I would watch the sun, crows, insects, and other dogs uncover the pearly white ribs hidden underneath his black fur. I would make a habit of visiting Mocho. In the photo, I'm 3 years old and I'm smiling at the camera. I got a knife in my hand and I'm cutting into the cake, but I don't remember eating. Off camera, the mandarina tree has not been cut down and the lemon tree is planted in a bucket. It was August and it was cloudy and muggy that day. My grandmother threw water on the dirt floor to keep the dust from rising, and to my cake, of course. In the photo, I am mostly complete. I've not met grief. It was the first time I met my mother. Well, my first memory of her anyway. In the photo, I am wearing an all blue outfit. Even then, I disliked wearing all one color. I remember feeling blue that day. I remember that I ran into the bedroom and hid under the bed, and my mother tried to console me, but she was a stranger back then. I would not have a memory of her until I was 8 years old, and I was standing on carpeted floors, and the smells in the house were all new to me. Even the bird songs needed translating. I felt like Mocho, belly up, unable to shoo away the insects coming to nibble on my flesh. So something that's really interesting about poetry for me is that I get so open in spaces like this, and you all will walk away knowing more about me than my family does, right? For whatever reason. That memory of my mother, that is the first time I met her, right? And I remember having these two really, really, really strong feelings for the first time, which was happiness, extreme, extreme happiness, and extreme anger. I was hitting the piñata, right? And I was like, oh my God, piñata, right? I'm hitting it, right? And behind the piñata, I see my mother. And she's joyous, happy, beautiful. And I'm like, nah, you left me. So I purposely missed the piñata. And I hit her in the stomach. So I was so angry, right? And however, I made sense of it. Then I never saw her again. For the last 3 years, I've been meaning to bring up that conversation with my mother, to be like, yo, I'm sorry, I hit you in the stomach with the stick. But we haven't had, we've had plenty of times, but I haven't been able to bring that conversation up. I've written about it, and that poem is fairly new. It's the first time I write about it and share it. Actually, this is the first time I've shared it publicly. I shared it on Instagram and stuff like that, which is cool because I can hide behind my screen. You don't have to see me, right? But yeah, I think with that said, I'm going to go into this poem. When they come for me. The knock on the door will sound like our worst fear. They would try to sugarcoat their arrival by telling you that everything will be okay. You will look at me. I will look at you. We will find no answers in our eyes. That they will knock again. This time, it will sound like a grenade. We will dry our faces. I will hug you tight. I will tell you, everything will be okay. We will kiss. They will knock again. This time, we will hear them cock their weapons. Their boots will sound heavy as rain. They will step back. They will knock the door down when they come for me. Let them know that as a little kid, I dreamt of a nice house with fruit trees in the mountains. Let them know that my heart was a compass when I crossed their border. Invite them to eat. Show them pictures of my mother and of my third birthday party. Tell them stories of when we first met, of the time I wanted to hold your hand, but I was too shy to do so. Tell them about my poems. Read one to them. Ask for their reaction. Offer them desserts. Offer them water. Play them Chavela Vargas. Tell them about my mountain town, about late nights underneath Mexican skies. Tell them about my mother and of my aunts, of my uncles and stepfather. Explained to them that my heart was the compass, that my heart has always been the compass, that quietly I have always tried to stay true to my convictions. If they search the house, make sure they don't steal anything, including me. Guide them towards the garden. Make sure they don't step on our crops. Tell them that they will not steal my flowers, for I have planted them deep in the sea. They will need to learn how to swim far and how to hold their breath long. Let them know that I have always been like this, that I have always been amazed by the way seeds move mountains, that I have always wanted to be a seed, that I have always wanted to be a mountain. If they question you about my absence, describe to them the way my ribcage and lungs dance together when I run. Diles que traigo puestos los guaraches de Emiliano Zapata. Diles que traigo las canciones de mi abuelo aquí en mi pecho. Diles que no me alcanzarán. If they question you further, tell them that I left my pencils in a cup, that I left my notebook on the desk, that I left my shoes by the foot of the bed, that I left my heart next to a volcano, that I left my eyes next to a cornfield, that I left my arms around my great-grandmother's tombstone. They may not understand metaphor. In any case, tell them that I was born during a thunderstorm. Therefore, my mother made sure to put lightning in my veins and thunder in my chest so that I could always speak like this. It may not be pretty when they come for me. They may drag me across the street. My flesh will leave graffiti marks on concrete. It will read, "We have never needed your approval to live." They may slam my jaw onto the hood of their car. You might hear my cheekbone snap. You might see my teeth fall out of my mouth like shooting stars. You will hear my tongue mumble, "Flesh. It's not the only way to be alive." They may accidentally shoot me. From the bullet holes, little red waterfalls will drip, forming a lake around my body. My soul will swim to your feet. Pick it up and let them know that they cannot kill my spirit, that they cannot kill my memory, for it will find a home in the mouths of my people, and they will be anything but quiet. My girlfriend at that time, I was writing a lot of poems, right? And I was like, "Yo, like, here's a poem I wrote, you know, what do you think?" And, you know, they always gave me, like, what do you call it, just feedback, real honest feedback. Right, I'm reading it, and I'm like, and there's like, it's silent, right? And I look up, and she's like crying. She's like, "No, dude, why'd you write that?" And I was like, "Because the mailman scares me when he comes unannounced. That's why. I think they're here to take me. You know, that's why I wrote it, man." But yeah. Let's go with this one. Where did I leave it? I thought I was organized. What happened, Alejandro? I don't know. Did I lose that home? Did I lose it? Alright. Cool. I did lose it. My bad, man. I'll find it. Actually, I'll do it off camera. Starts with the song. I'm not a good singer, but it helps me like calm down and get into the space of things. Oye, quiero la rosa perlada del rocío, el mar, el sol y este cielo tan mío para brindar la noche de mi amor. Oye, quiero la estrella de eterno fulgor, quiero la copa más fina de cristal para brindar la noche de mi amor. Sing me a brown song until your mouth breathes fire like a sweat lodge. Sing me a brown song until it is known that the singular of tamales is tamal. Sing it until we claim Spanish, English as our second, third, fifth, fourth, sixth, seventh, eighth language. We've existed since before there was a word for tongue. Sing me a brown song until we stop calling ourselves Hispanic. Until we, Latino, Latina, Latinoa, Latinx, Latine, Chicano, Chicana, Chicanex, Charrúa, Chapín, Chapulín, chichas, charitos, cholas, chulas, chingonas, cabronas, chilangos, chismosos, chalinos, catrachos, cafeteros, canaleros, colimenses, costeños, caribeños, oaxaqueños, norteños, sureños, troqueando cheds, tlacuaches, cuz, brujos, brujas, brújulas y burbujas, nicas, nicos, ninos, guarinís, jíbaros, bonacos, salvis, ticos, ticas, tacos de tripas, rudos y rudos y cursis, fresas y cerezas, selenas, ancelinas, mojados, chopas, truchas y pescados, morena, morenito, malinche, machista, el apache, light skin, white passing, indigenous, mestizos, wannabe, indios, pochos, paisas, prietos, negros, brown bag test, and no sabo kids agree on one singular unifying term for all of us. Sing me a brown song on your caballo, in your troca, in your impala, in your botas, in your cortezes, in your huaraches, in your danza azteca. Sing me a brown song until the smell of copal surpasses the smell of patchouli for the hippiest shit ever, until my homies start accepting credit cards at the healing ceremony. Sing me a brown song until el chico del apartamento 512 gets a house with a yard. Y la querida de Juan Gabriel returns. And your heartbreak becomes a wood stove in the middle of winter. And we learn to tame the wildfires with our bed sheets and become firefighters for the sole reason that we like to carry water in our hands, and we learn to juggle hot coals like we do our insecurities, and we kiss each other like volcano smoke kisses the sky, and we fall into each other's palms like our torsos fall into each other after climax. Sing me a brown song until La Llorona finds her children. And absentee fathers stop playing the longest games of hide and seek. Sing it until ice melts into water. And we plant gardens on the rubble of detention centers. And we make swing sets out of its metal and steel. And we play wobble and graffiti that wall. And we make wind chimes out of their melted guns. And we hear them howl like a hanging purgatory. Sing me a brown song with pianos and violins and guitars and tubas and drums and saxophones and accordions and the tololoche and the bajo sexto and their loved ones' laughter. Sing it until candles at funerals burn, because our loved ones have risen and they are returning with jars full of tears that turn into honey wine. Sing me a brown song until rosary is the word we use for story time about flowers. Y'all are getting a lot of firsts. This is the first time I did it off page.
So good.
Awesome. Let's do this one. My father passed away unexpectedly last November. This is a poem. This is a title. I'll start now. Poem about being Mexican without using any of the following words or phrases. Mexican, brown, tortillas, la Virgen de Guadalupe, piñatas, Jesucristo, Aztecs/Mexicas, borders, tacos, immigration, horchata, banda norteña, cumbia, mariachi, chalino, cerveza, raíces, Cancún, Tulum, Cabo, Chupacabras, La Llorona, Arriba, Ay Chihuahua, Frida, Cholo, Chola, Chingón, El Canelo, La Bamba, Tamales, Pozole, Menudo, Drug Cartels, El Chapo, El Cucuy, Botas, Vacas, Caballos y Gallos. This, of course, is a working title. The evening after we buried my father, my grandmother suggests that I set my alarm early. That trash needs to be out in the corner by 6 in the morning, she says. The alarm sounds at 5:30 a.m. I listen for my father's footsteps. I wiggle my toes. I run my hands over the bed sheets towards my lover's body. I bend my knees, take a deep breath. My neck is stiff, my eyes dry. I know soon a part of me will be a ghost. I start back awake and my cell phone shines 5:57 a.m. on my face. I jump from bed and rush to the back patio and pick up the bag full of trash. It is surprisingly light and it smells of rotten meat and coffee. I sleepily balance atop the cobblestone street towards the corner. I notice the red brakes of a big truck a few blocks down. I am standing at the middle of the street and I ponder if I want to run with the big trash can, the big trash bag, to catch the truck. A man silently approaches me and asks, Oiga, ¿ya pasó la basura? No, he responds. ¿A qué horas pasa? I cast those words at him, trying to catch some hope that would save me from my family's ridicule, from sleeping through my alarm. He slightly smiles. Pues como a las 7, he says without breaking a stride and disappearing into the dark. I am not one to believe strangers, so at the second man that walks towards me, I ask, Oiga, ¿a qué horas pasa la basura? Without breaking a stride. Como a las 8, he says while disappearing into the same dark as the man before him did. Standing in the corner, shivering and holding the trash bag, resent starts to grow towards my grandmother. But she didn't raise no fool, so at the third man that approaches me, I ask, Oiga, ¿a qué horas pasa la basura? He stops briefly and looks around. Pues como a las 9, esa no tiene hora. His tone borders sarcasm, as if I should know this information already, but I don't, and apparently neither did my grandmother, but she didn't raise no fool, so I ask the man, that is now staring at me really, really confused. Me dijeron que aquí dejara la basura. ¿Dónde exactamente la dejo? Pues por ahí. He points. Nowhere in particular, as he walks into the same dark as the two men before him did. I finished telling this story next to the table where my father had his last beer. My whole family explodes in laughter. My grandmother makes excuses. My aunt howls at the ceiling. My mother smiles and shakes her head. My girlfriend's face reddens from giggling. Thunder comes from my brother's throat, and no part of my body feels like a ghost. In unison, we all catch our breath and head over to the next room to start my father's rosary. I'll do the last one, and then I'll open up for Q&A. This is a little bit longer of a piece. The first time I did a TEDx, I'm grateful that I've done 3 of them already. I'm missing that poem part of it. That's okay. Yeah, the first time I did TEDx, it was 2017. It was a huge break for me. Because then people were like, oh, you're a poet. Nah, I'm like, I've been a poet for 10 years, dude. But they were like, but the TEDx rounding, like, people believe me. Right? It's like, whatever. It's like I was Bigfoot back then, or something. But I got a lot of attention from the crowd, and obviously, and whatever. But a lot of the attention that I got, the presentation that I did, I felt did a good job at that spectrum of being an immigrant, of being a male and trying to fit into these roles and trying to break those roles or whatever, right? But a lot of attention was like, oh, poor you. Ah, you live in the shadows. You have no agency. And I was like, what do you mean, dude? You have lots of agencies. You get up every single day, and like work jobs that you don't want to work. What do you mean? And so one day I got out of bed. I didn't get out of bed actually. Like about a month or so afterwards, I was like, you know what? I'm not getting out of bed until I write something. That kind of sort of doesn't get to that. But this is called How the Women in My Family Dance in 4 Generations. It's a little long. Abuela Esperanza. Imagine rows of corn. Their long green leaves swaying to the rhythm of wind. Imagine the sound they make when crushing upon each other like tired waves relieved to find a resting place. Imagine all the birds chirping, the crickets at night, a well-orchestrated symphony that all of us know, that all of us enjoy. That calmness, that safety. That's how I felt watching my great-grandmother dance. She was a temple with swift legs, a good harvest season rain when it was most needed. She would lift her skirt past her knees, and when the drums and trumpets sounded, her feet would stomp the floor one after the other as if proclaiming, this is my land. This has always been my land, and this is how you dance. Her eyes, fixated in the ritual, the feather-like movements of her arms, they were the same hands she used to hold herself up as a single mother, to till the land, to cook for an army of campesinos 3 times a day, 7 days a week, the same hands she used to raise grandchildren and great-grandchildren like me. Those hands would eventually show me how necessary it is to hold on to things that we cannot live without. So when the arthritis hit, she did not complain about it, locking her knuckles, unable to make tortillas or cook. She complained because it kept her from dancing. And when she danced, people would point and say, look, Esperanza's dancing, look. And she knew. And she showed off, and she laughed, and the closest I ever got to see her cry was when she danced, so when she died. I like to believe that the hundreds of people who flocked into her tiny home from our neighboring mountain towns to pay their last respects to her, they were trying to catch one last glimpse of her dance, and the candles surrounding her deathbed upon which she laid was the fire that would light her new shimmy. And those in attendance did not want to miss it. My grandmother's dance is a slow rumble, slowly picking up speed with every twist, with every strum of the guitar getting louder and louder. She is patient with her steps. She is not as flamboyant as her mother. She doesn't stomp the floor when she dances. She doesn't yell or swing her arms out of control. I like how my grandmother dances. She knows there is so much power in tranquility, in being patient with your steps. She usually cries when she dances. And I can never tell if they are tears of joy or of sorrow. She doesn't like the attention when she dances. Instead, she invites everybody to dance with her. She wants to camouflage herself into other dancing bodies. And we will all join and laugh and chant loudly. Amidst all of this, she will step out of the crowd, sit back and watch what she has created. I mean this in its entirety, poetry aside. I don't pray much. I don't really believe in God. But seeing the grace of my grandmother's dance, I know there has to be something higher than me. And she has seen it. I know she has. So when she extends her hand for me to dance with her, I take it. I ask her to spin me. I ask her to take me to where this higher being is. I ask her to spin, twist, bend, dip, and throw me up into the air like a rice on a wedding day. And she laughs, calls me crazy, asks me what I am talking about, and she hugs me. And I feel her tears land on my neck. And in that moment is when I realize that she is the higher being that I believe in. Yo, my mother, she was dancing so fast one time that she fell. Her feet could not keep up with her happiness, so they asked her to slow down. But she dances like my great-grandmother, with the urgency of a revolt waiting at the brim of her feet. She dances with the same audacity she had when she crossed the border. Like nothing will get in her way to get to where she is going. Ask El Rio Grande if she has ever let any wall get in her way. She is an immaculate sight dancing, an alchemist, turning any floor she dances on into her new home. See, when my mother dances, her feet land so hard on the floor that I know my great-grandmother somewhere in the ground, rattling the bottom of her casket with her feet, praising that. That's the girl that I raised. When my mother dances, she is a full-body mantra. Too joyous for her tongue to be silent, she opens her mouth, points it towards the heaven and yells, opens her arms, inviting the musicians to play faster, and she yells again, tugs her hair behind her ear, bites her lip, and blesses the ground with her presence. My mother has worked and toiled since she was a little girl. She hasn't had very many days off. Except for the day after my cousin's quinceañera. She woke up and complained in pain. She said, my feet, they hurt from dancing. I will rest today. She sat in a chair, iced water in a cup, sipping and laughing about the night before, saying that it was such a shame that La Banda had to stop playing at 3 in the morning. I think we share a mom. Maybe. Well, happy. I've seen my mother. Was that moment when she got up after she fell. She dusted herself, laughed, grabbed one of her friends by her hand, and without missing a beat, she continued dancing. There is something about the women in my family and how they dance, of how they look like a paintbrush stroking space and painting the room with laughter. There is something about the women in my family and how they dance, of how it seems that if they were to dance a little bit longer, a little bit faster, sway their hips a little bit wider, they would unleash the revolution that we so much romanticize and need. There's something about the women in my family and how they dance, of how it seems they are taking a narrative and giving it new meaning. Like when they dance, we are not all tragedy. We are not all death and murder. Like we don't have to bury caskets stuffed with our bodies and pretend we are seats anymore. When they dance, we remember that we are an open border of untamed brown joy. Like despite all the odds against us, we still dance. We still celebrate, for what is life without laughter? Why continue to fight if we do not celebrate our victories? Like every day we wake up is a gift. Like every word I write is a musical note. Like we are all sitting in the back of the room and the floor is open and the women in our lives are center stage and they are dancing and we are asking them to spin us, to take us to where this higher being is, asking them to spin, twist, bend, dip, and throw us up into the air like rice on a wedding day, all while chanting, baila, mama, baila, baila, mama, baila. And when they extend their hand out to us, we take and we dance. And we dance too. Thank you all so much. Cool. So yeah, now we can open up for Q&A. Questions about poems, questions about the industry of being a poet. Cool. And then Ron, and then we'll go to Alex.
Yeah, I was wondering how do you go about creativity, or how do you approach writing? Do you have like a schedule? Do you write every day, or do you wait for inspiration to come? How do you go about it?
So this month I've been running every day because it's National Poetry Month, so I've been trying to do that challenge of 30-30, right? But generally, I was in this workshop with Anis Moshkani, the poet laureate of Oregon. Amazing person, amazing poet as well. And I think for the longest time, you know, up until like 2 or 3 years ago, I was like, if I'm not producing consistently, then I'm not a poet. So this need to produce, right, was really ingrained, right, because capitalism or whatever, what have you, right? And so he said something that really stuck with me, and which I tried to like internalize, to not feel bad about myself. He said, you know, you need to figure out what your relationship with writing is, you know. And so what that means is, you know, for me now, it's like I can go months without writing anything, and I'm fine with it. And I can go months with like writing almost every other day, and that's dope, you know. So just figuring out and not putting pressure on yourself to be like, oh, you know, when, you know, yeah, if it's the moment, cool. Maybe you experience something you want to write down. Awesome. You know, if your intention of being like, you know what, I have friends who are like, every Friday is their writing day. Every Friday they're gonna write, right? And have that same friend. He's like every other Friday it's his writing day, and every other Friday is his editing day, which in turn is writing as well, right? Because you're editing poems or whatever, right? And so it just looks different for everybody. So you just need to figure out what works for you, stick with it, and then when it's time to like, you know, fix something, not fix, but like do something different, do it. I mean, there's no right way. Okay. I think it was Alex.
Oh, yeah, my question's kind of a handful, but how did you first start out? Like, how did you start out with poetry, and how did you convert it into a career, too?
I started writing poetry. I'll give you the funny answer first, and I'll give you the serious. I was in love with this girl in 2nd grade. I wrote her, this when I was in Mexico, I wrote her a poem. It said, Nancy, probably something I heard, right? Tu sonrisa es como el amanecer, quieres ser mi novia, your smile is like the sunset. Do you want to be my girlfriend? She looked at it, and then I found out that she's my cousin. I'm glad it didn't work out. I don't know. Hey, Grandma. How's it going, Grandma? Distant cousin, like 3rd or 4th, you know, which people are like, oh, it's fun. I want to have you grow up all the time, man. Anyway, the serious one is my last semester of college. I went to a predominantly white institution in Oregon, where I grew up, Willamette University. And so in high school, I was like, you know, like the high school I went to was about 30% Mexican, or, you know, brown students in general, you know, and so diverse, right, for Oregon standards. You know, but going to Willamette, I was like one of like maybe like 10 or 15 Latinos, you know, on the whole campus, out of a campus of about 2,000 folks. I think it wasn't the first time, but that's when things really became really tangible. I was like, oh, these policies, or but these things, like, not having the counselor knew how to talk to us about, being undocumented, how to navigate the system, right? Or even how to talk to us if we were born here or had papers to go to college, right? And I was like, man, so I was so angry. And so my last semester, I saw on YouTube when I was starting HBO Deaf Poetry Jam, and I just remember watching like the brown poets, right? And just poets in general, right? But like the ones I really connected with other brown poets, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And so, yeah, I started writing literally, like my first poem was like, I think like January of my last semester of college. Now, I'm turning it into a career, I think, talking to Alexis earlier, I think a lot of it has just been super accidental and, lucky, and just, I don't know, I think I've always, growing up as a farm worker and stuff, I was always like, well, what's the stability that I can give, my family, right? Being the first one in my family to graduate middle school, high school, and college, right? And so I was gonna have like the big job that pay a lot of money, and a lot of you are like in that position, like, oh no, apply to this. I thought by having a college degree, there was gonna be like people lining up to hire me, right? And I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to get off for $100,000. That never happened, right? And so I moved to Denver afterwards, after college, and it was like the mecca at that time of performance poetry, And so luckily, I didn't know that when I moved there, and so a lot of folks, were making it. Like not like ramen and noodles and like whatever, like making it, like paying car bills, paying houses, raising kids on poetry alone, and whatever projects they were doing, right? So I think one thing that has stayed constant, one surrounding myself with artists, and poets, and and then just being honest with the work. People like, I think gravitate towards honesty. At least that's what I gravitate towards, and I think that's what the biggest advice I've gotten from my artist friends is like, just be honest. Don't lose sight of what your purpose is. With the writing, don't lose sight of why you started writing in the first place, and the rest will fall into place. And obviously, you can like pursue certain things like grants and fellowships, residencies, whatever, but and then the things will. I've been lucky enough and privileged enough that I'm on the second week of a whole month tour that will pay the bills for the next however many months. Even if I don't get any other gig for the next 2-3 years, or next 2-3 months, not there yet, so it's something I never thought it was going to be possible. So.
All right, we'll take one more question, and then unfortunately we do have to close.
Awesome, cool. But yeah, I'll be around if you want to talk outside or something. But yeah, Josh.
So out of all the poems you read so far, which one would you consider the most difficult to write? And then which one would you consider like the most the one that you connect to the most?
The one about my father, I think was difficult. And the one about my mother too. I think those are the 2 poems I've written in the last like 6 months. The only 2 poems, really. And then whatever I write, before April. The ones I connect to the most, both of them for sure. Dancing Women. The Dancing, I love that poem. I'm like, oh, good job, because it just reminds me about everything, all the good and the bad, but like, there's always joy in all the shit that all these women in my family have to endure, had to endure, and they passed, that focus to me, to like, yes, there's horrible shit that happens, but we have this joy, that cannot be taken away regardless of what happens.
Well, can we all give it up? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I hope you all genuinely enjoyed it. Like he just said, he will be here in case you have any more questions or you just want to come up. Don't forget to grab a tote bag. I know I keep like advocating totes, but we got it. Also, Cluj, we have recently published our fall journal. Ron, where is that available at?
It's available on Lulu, so follow Cluj on Facebook with information about Lulu there. You can get a copy, but we will have the copies soon for our members. Stay tuned.
Yes.
Vagabond, this was brought
Yes.
by Vagabond.
Awesome. Feel free to ask any questions about that.